Welcome to the Create Your Happy podcast, where conscious female creators come together with a shared vision to inspire and empower women as they learn how to fully embrace their humanness, find their unique voice, and collaborate on how together we can change the world. I'm your host, Christy Holt, happiness coach and conscious funpreneur on a mission to change the world one beautiful soul at a time. All right, gorgeous, it's time to get curious and become inspired. It's time to create your happy. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited. Today I have Wena McLelland on the show, and I am so excited to have this conversation. Wena is a soul expansion coach, and her business, Warrior Wellness Coaching, is focused on the whole human, mind, body, and soul. And I know we are absolutely going to have an amazing conversation today. So welcome to the show, Wena. I can't wait to hear some of your stories of overcoming. Let's start with a little bit about your backstory and what maybe brought you to this place of wanting to help people on this complete whole human level.
First off, thanks for having me, and I'm super excited to be here. So my background started as a young adult. I started living a really unhealthy lifestyle. And, it started to catch up to me. I started to feel unhealthy, very stagnant, didn't really feel like I had a super great direction in which I was going to. I had received messages from a young age, but I never really clicked in and connected to them. So fast forward a couple of years later, and here I am. I'm met my husband and we're ready to start a family, and I'm sitting there having fertility issues. And so at a specialist's office, here I was sitting here being super happy and healthy. My body just was sluggish and I wasn't working with me. And I remember sitting in my car, and I just left, my specialist appointment, and there wasn't much hope at the time. It didn't feel like there was much hope. So I'm sitting there bawling, and all of a sudden I hear this message, and it says, if you change nothing, nothing will change. And I feel like that was a super, just empowering moment where I was like, it changed the trajectory of where I was going and how I ended up here. And I think it was because of that moment, it led me to this path. So I started to make some changes, I kicked some bad habits, and I really worked into first it started off working on my body, and then it started I wanted to feel stronger. I wanted to feel healthier. So there you go. I found my love for fitness.
Yeah.
And then through that love for fitness, I realized that that wasn't just it, right? Like I had mindset work to do. And so through that mindset work, I was like, oh, here we go. And then I started to listen to more messages and listen to my intuition and connecting deeper within myself. And there came the soul work for me. And so it really led me to this path of now working with people on a really holistic level where we work on mindset, soul, and body.
Yeah. And I love that. And I actually feel like I had a similar sort of path as well. As I started in sort of that health and wellness arena. And then it continued to just evolve and sort of snowball from there, because once you have sort of a foundation built, then you're continuing to grow. And these parts of you that are growing also show up in your business as your business continues to grow. And I know that you're an entrepreneur. Tell us a little bit about your business evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. So it started off by, personal training and group fitness classes. And I still do a little bit of that. But it really evolved into coaching then. And now, I've married the two practices because I really do feel it is it's a whole journey. And I also did some soul work as well. So then I also bring in some of the soul work with that to create those three pillars that I really stand for. And so right now, that's how I work. I serve clients. Yeah.
And I remember actually I met you when you were teaching Pound, and I checked out a class, and that's how we met. So that's kind of just a fun little backstory. And it's interesting how at that time we were both just teaching fitness classes, and how far we both have come in our journey since then. And it's really interesting how as we are evolving and growing, these new facets of things are showing up. And as we are addressing, those parts of our soul and our self, and how we are going to lean into and expand into those things, how much more impact we can create. And I know, like, the same for me, there was something about the teaching the fitness. There was like an energetic component to it for sure, but it still felt like there was a lot more. And like you, it sort of evolved first into a lot more mindset work and doing that, belief shifting and, evaluating what's working, what's not working, and really leaning into what feels good in your body. And then addressing how sometimes our mind gets in the way. And so in order to shift those habits, there's another piece to it. And this is why I think a lot of people really struggle with new habits. So share with us a little bit about shifting habits and what that mindset connection for you has to do with, moving into those new habits.
Absolutely. One of the things I get my clients to do when I start working with them is like create a vision themselves, their future vision of themselves, which is, readily and available to them. And oftentimes, what they come up with is like confidence, strong, healthy, energetic. And I ask them if they're currently, working, operating in this system, in this, the way they want to show up. And they say no.
Yeah.
So, here's the thing is like, we could do all the fitness in the world. We could have all these goals and all these things. But if we don't get to the root, if we don't change the belief, the system of which we're operating in, we will never see true lasting results. Something will always happen and it will lead us back to old habits and old habits. And so that is what, like, I'm very passionate about that. And that's where I take my clients and, we take a look at the system that they're operating in, and then we create a new belief system. We start to work on how do we really connect to that vision of who they are and get them operating in a system that's going to support that vision and get them closer to that. So it's sustainable and manageable too, right? Like there's that we don't want to go back there. And it's not to say that you're ever going to go back, because I think, as we probably could both, agree upon, is that once you start doing the work, it's not that you ever go back to an old version of yourself. Yep. You have old beliefs that pop up every once in a while, or old conversations that you've had with yourself. But it's not to say that you'll ever revert back to that, because once you evolve, there's no really going back, right? So I think
even when we're seeing repeating patterns, or just similar circumstances. And sometimes it can make us feel like, oh my God, I haven't gotten anywhere because this is still coming up for me. I think there is a lot of beauty in recognizing that we are always on a journey upwards. And even if the same patterns are recurring, or, we're having similar things happen again, we are not the same. We are looking at those things from a different level, a more elevated level, and more awareness around what is actually happening here. And when we can start to see those patterns for what they are, and most of it is, subconscious programming, those beliefs, like you say, that operating system, some of which we build our identity upon because, we've taken some of those beliefs, some of those past experiences, some of those emotions, and built our identity upon them. And actually, when we don't address that identity piece, those beliefs, it's really freaking hard to change out of that and to create new habits for a higher self when our identity is stuck in this place of consistent comfort zone, the identity that we have created before that doesn't really align with where we want to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And, I think part of that is like, we sometimes forget to almost like, not to dream, but to like vision, like what are the opportunities? What does that look like? And really like take that moment, and even on, a spiritual level, just connect to that and bring all the pieces together.
Now, do you encounter a lot of clients who maybe feel kind of stuck and they haven't allowed themselves maybe that space to really dream, that space to really envision what a future could look like for them? Because it is really easy to stay in our comfort zone with the familiar, because our brain can tend to tell us that things are very scary when we think about doing things differently, and has this oh so handy mechanism built in to keep us in our comfort zone, keep us safe, unless we are pretty intentional about, making those changes and doing the work, the foundational work to support those changes. So what do you do, or how do you work with those people who maybe don't feel like they have a big vision or that they have a big goal because maybe they just haven't allowed themselves to go there?
I think that's, what I think that's true, Christy, for a lot of people. I think that it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing to try and think big or think outside of your comfort zone, because we do feel safe. So, I bring it down to two emotions. Are we operating out of fear, which a lot of people are, or are we operating out of love? And I really break it down, and we take it through like the whole whiteboard, and we'll have a big thing. And oftentimes people have a hard time connecting to this vision because they haven't, or they're scared to connect with it. And so, like I talk about it with them, like we build relationships with our kids, with our partners, with our friends. And sometimes, a lot of times, we can forget to build that relationship with ourselves. And I think that is a foundational piece, right? Because if you start to build that relationship with yourself, you're going to bring awareness up to, am I operating out of fear, out of like trying to keep myself safe? Am I trying to keep myself, comfortable? Or, if you're connected to yourself, are you going to have the confidence to kind of take that step further, to push a little bit more here and push a little bit more there? And that's where like coaching helps, and getting, aligned with the right coach that's going to be able to take you and push you a little bit out of that comfort zone, but help you make the connections as well that are true to you, because it's not about anybody else. It's about the inner work, the inner peace.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I completely agree. Honestly, it does all start with us. It does start with, getting a bit curious, because I think sometimes we forget who we are, and we can tend to allow other people or society or expectations or our past experiences and emotions to tell us who we are. And instead of asking, who the fuck am I?
Yeah,
we just accept that. And I think that's really important to get curious about, sometimes where that's coming from or whatnot. And then as well, where do you want to go? Because if there's a disconnect in that belief, and you're believing ultimately, maybe even potentially at a subconscious level, that you are not worthy of having the dream, that you are, not capable of having the dream, that, whatever might be coming up, sometimes even at a lower subconscious level, might stop you from progressing to that higher self. So in your opinion, what do you think is sort of the first basic step in taking that self-love, that self-worth, and all of that, and elevating that so that you can move forward?
So I think it's like, I would encourage people to start by taking a look and just bringing awareness, being the observer of the conversations that you have with yourself. Like, drop the judgment at the door, whether you're comparing yourself to other people or you're shoulding and shoulding on yourself. Like, listen to the conversations you're having with yourself and ask yourself, like, just really down and basic, like, are these conversations coming from a place of love, or are they coming from a place of like, fear? Like maybe you're having these conversations and you're really hard on yourself, and yes, they are really deeply rooted, but you're not going to get to that root necessarily before you get to just like the acceptance piece. And I think that's what it is like, listen to these conversations. Like you said, be curious about them. Ask yourself where they're coming from. And I think that the next step that a lot of people, like, number one is always the awareness, right? too, it's like, I think that it's, like, we can be really hard on ourselves. We're our own worst inner critics.
Yep.
Right. And I think that oftentimes people, the clients that I work with, like, they forget to give themselves credit. They forget to show gratitude. They forget to, appreciate all the stuff that they do, all their strengths. And they tend to lean into more of their weaknesses, all the shouldn't, society. I should be doing this. I got to do that. Like, I haven't done this today. Instead of looking at like all the things that they did accomplish, like all the things that the great things that they're working on, and focusing on more of their strengths based. I think that's huge.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that, I don't know if you experience this the same way as I do, but I think a lot of that comes from the way that we are taught, and especially in women. We are not taught to celebrate those strengths. We are taught to be modest and humble and meek, instead of being bold and fierce and strong. Society doesn't want to sit with that. So women are told to just tone it down, stay soft, stay gentle, instead of leaning into their fierceness, their passion, their unconditional love. Now, we all have masculine and feminine energy, and it's about finding the balance between the two, right? And so, yes, we can be soft and nurturing and gentle at times, and other times call for us to be fierce and passionate and outspoken, right?
In certain situations, you're going to bring masculine energy, and in certain situations you're going to bring feminine energy, but it's maybe finding that harmony within the two energies. So sometimes at points of your day you're going to show up more masculine, and other times, like when you're working out, right, you're going to show up a little bit more masculine. However, like at the parts of your days when you're ready to have some calm quiet, and maybe you're doing some meditation and some journaling or card pulling, like you're going to lean into that feminine energy. And maybe when you're corralling your kids, you might have a little bit more masculine energy in the structure that you're bringing towards them, yet you're still going to have that feminine energy when you're mothering them and nurturing them and caring for them as well. So it really is just the harmony within, and just kind of going with the flow between that. And I think, that ties into the whole conversation about like bringing it back to, your playing within the energies and coming back to like who you really are, and finding that confidence to be able to be who you are, and not, get wrapped up in what you think everybody else thinks you should be, because it's not everybody else. It's about you.
Yeah. And I agree. It's not like balance in that it's equal. It's balance in that whatever part of you is needing to show up at that time is available, and you're willing to call upon it in that moment, right? And so sometimes that is going to be on one or the other end of the spectrum, but that we are able to bring both sides of that energy into our life, into the right places.
Yeah. And understand, like I've worked with a lot of clients as we do soul work, and, really just working on understanding their own undercurrent for their energy. And, sometimes it even comes up that it's like, well, I feel more like I connect to more of the masculine energy, and that's as a female, and that's not a bad thing. Like that's absolutely not a bad thing. However, when it's like, well, I wish that I could play a little bit more in the feminine energy, then it's just about, like, how do we marry the two and kind of find some flow within both of them? And what does that look like for that person? Because that will look different than what it would look like to me or to you or to, like all the listeners out there. So I think it's just kind of like finding out what your undercurrent is and how you operate, and then leaning into that.
Yeah. And so first step, finding that awareness. What do you think is the next step after you've, taken the observer standpoint? Okay. So we're not operating purely out of ego. We're in this observer standpoint. Maybe let's talk to that for a moment first, just in case anyone is not completely clear on being the observer and what the ego and soul roles are. So maybe you can share a little to that, and then we can kind of address what the next step would be.
Yeah, sure. So like ego is operating in very linear, like very like systematic, like logical. As like the soul side of things is kind of like listening to what that intuition's telling you, what's like what feelings you're getting, what like messages you're getting. So when I talked about like I had this message come to me, it's not like it was a message that popped up on my phone and text message. It was a message that I just had this knowing and I just heard it. So listening with our other senses, I guess, really, and just leaning into that soul expansion part of it. So the observer is just kind of like, you're not necessarily like, you're just listening to the messages and the information. And instead of judging it, you're just observing.
Right. Which takes you sort of in a new place as far as your identity goes, because when you can come to the realization that as from a soul perspective, you are not defined by your thoughts. Some of them be crazy. Some stuff you're like, where the fuck did that come from?
All right.
Right? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't line up. What? Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's bad. And we're not necessarily our emotions. I mean, our emotions flow through us and they are signals from our body, from energy. But the stories and the meanings we attach also tend to wrap themselves into our identity. And when we can create that space to recognize, okay, well, I'm not, I may be sad, but it doesn't mean I am, a depressed person. I may be irritable. Doesn't mean I'm a grumpy person. It's just the experience of the emotions. And we tend to put those stories and we like let it spiral because human nature. And then with the ego too, I just want to add, it's really important to know that ego is not all bad. It is actually helpful. And it's actually the mechanism that's intended to keep us safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. So, but I think too, going back to that is that we like, once you can take that observer side, the next, like if you're going for like the next level of awareness, it's looking at what perception your things are coming at you at and what lens you're looking through them. So I think that it's like sometimes, depending on where you're at, you may react versus just like nothing is necessarily good or bad until we give it meaning, right? And so I think it also depends on like taking a moment sometimes to be like, okay, well, how am I interpreting this at this time? And like we all know when we're in moments of rage or frustration or anger, if you have that time to like let that cool down period happen, oftentimes you can come back at it with a different demeanor, different approach. So, part of that is like, is it good or bad, or is it just what it is? And, you attach the meaning to it and you attach the perception to it. So
absolutely. And that perception that we're creating in our minds with the thoughts and the assumptions and the physiological response or reaction is in fact creating our reality. And that creation of that reality can keep us stuck in victim mentality of suffering and struggle, or it can create our freedom to become the victor and, in control of our life. And that small perspective shift can make the world of difference. If you, can make that little shift, you can take back your power and create the reality that you would ultimately like to. It's actually in your control. It's all within you.
Sometimes it will feel like we're doing 2 steps forward and then we get, like we feel like we're going backwards. But again, like we said earlier, it's not that you're going to go completely back to where you once were. And I think it's always work. So it's not to say that it's like, yes, I got this. And the next hard level of awareness, expansion, soul work is done and over with. And I see this people when I do like Akashic readings and we do really like work in that subconscious area. It's like, they're like, okay, I got it. And then they're like, okay, I got it. But now there's a next level or another piece. And I actually do really feel like sometimes there's it's like a puzzle piece, and we'll get a piece and we're like, sweet. And then that will lead us to new maybe awarenesses or experiences. And then we're like, wait a second, there's a puzzle piece missing here. And we need to do a little bit more work to infill that puzzle piece. So it's, it's part of that evolution process we go through.
Yeah. And I think that the more we create that awareness and the more we take responsibility, we can then really, own that power and shift into seeing things in a new way, reprogramming the operating system, doing that next level of, maybe peeling back another layer, going to that, new level, new devil, or new level, same devil, showing up slightly differently, because some of these patterns will continue to reoccur, sometimes as a bit of a way of testing. Okay, you think you've got this covered.
Yes. Yeah. The universe will send you little triggers, right? To say like, okay, this is your opportunity. And, like either you're going to let this show up and send you down the rabbit hole, or you're going to be like, hey, I'm coming at it with a new perspective and nice one. But I'm reacting a totally different way than what I normally, or in the past, how I would have reacted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is all part of that growth and expansion, right? Into recognizing that sometimes those lessons will keep coming up until we really, really embody them, and not just on a mental level, but like on an emotional level too, right? And even bringing the subconscious, the nervous system into it as well, so that we are really able to shift. I consider it like from reacting to responding. And to circle it back to what you were talking about before, our brain is designed to flip that switch. The amygdala pops on there to keep us safe. We operate from that flight fight response for 60 to 90 seconds. And if you can become aware that this is the process, this is the way that your brain is designed, having that awareness allows you to remember, okay, I'm in this flight or fight. It's going to last 60 to 90 seconds. I need to just take responsibility and develop some skills, some strategies, some tools, to work through that, because it will pass.
Yeah. Right? Deep breaths, man. Deep breaths. And the other thing that I really talk to clients about being is like, it is hugely about safety. It's hugely about safety. And when we can talk to ourselves and calm ourselves in the sense of knowing that having faith and knowing that you are always, always supported. So when deep breaths, right? Deep breaths and connect to your spiritual team and just, ask for some support and some guidance. It will, like, if you could find the safety in that, it will bring you down from that like anxious level to that like, right? And it sometimes may take time to practice that, but I think always telling yourself that you're supported from a soul level, if you could really embody that and deepen your relationship within to know that you're always supported, it will be a huge help for when those moments come up, during that 60 to 90 seconds when you're feeling like, oh crap, like fuck, right? And it's take a second, remember your breath. Like, breath is so important to bring us back to that present moment, because then like when we're in that moment of like we're going, our mind's going, and we're thinking like, well, we're now like going down the rabbit hole, and we're thinking about all the horrible possibilities that are going to happen. If you could just break that thought process and that moment of like spiraling and just
interrupt the pattern so that you can break out of responding from that space, and instead respond from a more intentional space where you are in control. You are, using the intention that you have to experience the situation on a new level, to experience yourself on a new level, and to be able to have better interactions in general, right? And to calm your body. I think before we can do any major type of change, we do need to figure out how we can regulate our nervous system so that that doesn't keep cock blocking us all the time from having what we want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, free ourselves up to create some new belief systems, some new thought patterns, some new habits in our life, which we just really aren't in a position to do if we are living in that survival mode, responding and acting out of fear, most of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really do. I really do agree with you on that. It's, like we got to make space. It's like we want to be able to have this vision of ourselves and be this best version, show up and be empowered and live a full life where we are, tapping into our desires and getting the most out of life, but yet we still block ourselves. And I think that is because we don't make room. We don't get rid of some of the old energy, some of the old stuff, some of the old habits, and make space for that allowing and surrendering, surrender to, open up and allow what is meant for you to be to come forth. Right.
And ultimately you are, everyone listening, I just want you to know today how absolutely fucking loved you are and how worthy you are of having every last one of those dreams that you have in your heart come true, and it's up to you ultimately to forge the way, to take responsibilities, to become aware, to create with intention, to become the creator of your own life. It's up to you, right? It's not up to someone else. And when we live in that pattern of, maybe complaining or blaming or making excuses, and we've all done it. Okay. So this is absolutely coming from a place of a lot of fuck ups and a lot of personal experience to tell you that as long as you continue to stay stuck in those patterns, you are going to continue to experience that which you are complaining about. You are going to continue to give your power to other people whom you are blaming, because it keeps you in a solution avoidance mode to be making excuses, to be shifting the blame, to be putting all of it onto someone else. I'll be happy when such and such circumstances.
That's right.
I'll be happy when my partner changes, which, okay, that's probably not going to happen as long as you are in that state. Now, what you can do is you can shift you. You can start with you. You can become aware of what's going on. You can take responsibility for your piece. You don't need to take responsibility for anyone else, but responsibility for you. And that's how you become so empowered to change, to break those habits and those patterns, and to move from reacting to responding and to create.
If you look at the word responsibility, break it down. It's responsibility. You have the ability. Ability is already within the word. You just need to tap into it and bring that forth yourself and really connect to that and stop giving away that power. Stop, playing in that low vibrational state, and instead start leaning into your strengths, start leaning into the positive, start showing gratitude, start, appreciating yourself. You give all this appreciation out to others, and then you complain about how things aren't working out for yourself, rather than okay, let's take a look within, right? It always starts from within. Appreciate yourself, appreciate, and even if you have this version of yourself, vision of yourself that you want to work towards, it's have a belief that you can and will reach the state that you want to reach.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't believe it's possible, you're blocking yourself from making it happen. Now, I really truly believe that if you can dream it, if you can envision it, it is possible.
I do too. I absolutely do too. Yes, 100%. I think sometimes we just need a couple steps, or maybe a little bit of help to get there sometimes. But I think with the right tools, you can get out of your own way and you can reach the goals and live the life that you truly want.
Yeah. And as long as you kind of stay there and don't, sometimes we really do, even coaches need coaches, right? I think that we can all benefit from having a solid support system and having people around us to encourage us and cheerlead us and help us, help guide us, because yes, it's all within us. However, sometimes it gets a little bit, the waters are muddy and we can't see because, it's foggy for us. And sometimes someone else can just help us clear some of the muck away, clear it away from our eyes. And then we can see a little bit more clearly what's meant to come out for us.
Absolutely.
Share with us a little bit about what you are working on right now, what you're excited about in your business that you'd love to share with the listeners.
Absolutely. So my business is Warrior Wellness Coaching. And at the moment, I have a wellness program going on where I am accepting one-on-one clients. So it is holistic based, where there are workouts available through an online app that people could take. And because I really do feel like once you have that piece where your body starts feeling stronger, you start getting more confident, you start feeling a little bit more comfortable in your skin. We also work on the mindset piece, removing some of those blocks and really like working on the belief systems and shifting into a belief system, an operating system that will support you to be that better version of self that you want to get through, right? And then also some of that energetic work. We're going to kind of lean into a little bit of that and clear some of that space, so that we can make room. We can make room for all the good stuff that, you want to work towards and call into your life, really.
Yeah. Ultimately, the entire whole human evolution towards your next level.
Absolutely. Yes. 100%.
So where can people find out a little bit more about you, Wena?
Yeah, so I'm on social media. So Facebook or Instagram is great. Yep. I think you'll have my email address if anybody wants to connect, but they could definitely find me on Facebook or Instagram.
Awesome. We'll have those links in the show notes as well, so we can just click right over and find you. Okay, I'd like to wrap up with one last question. And I'm going to ask you, what one tip or strategy, something practical that our listeners can use, what do you recommend that they do right now so that they can create a little bit more happiness in their life today?
You know what? I think that I'm going to encourage everybody to schedule in some fun. Oftentimes life can be heavy. We get caught up into the day-to-day. We get caught up in our head and all the things that we shouldn't be doing. And honestly, just to really embody and bring in that happiness, go connect, go have fun, go adventure, go meet up with a girlfriend for coffee. Just create a space where you can be present in the moment and be like, wow, I'm really enjoying this. And I feel really grounded at this time, and just come back to that presence.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. I think it's really important that even though we're adults, that we still make space for fun and adventure and play in our life, whatever that looks like for each individual person, but finding that space so that we can really, bring that inner child out and experience the beautiful, fun presence that we can have.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. I trust you were inspired to take back your power and create your happy. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with women in your life who could use a little extra inspiration today. If you'd like to connect with myself and/or today's guest, you can find those details in the show notes. We would love to hear from you. If you've got an inspiring story to share, you can also apply to be a guest on the show at createyourhappy.ca. As always, get out there, have fun, be you, and create your happy.